Islam Makhachev has etched his name in UFC history by accomplishing what only a select few have achieved, becoming a dual-division champion. On November 15, 2025, at UFC 322, the Dagestani warrior defeated Jack Della Maddalena via unanimous decision to claim the welterweight title while cementing his legacy as one of the greatest combat athletes of this generation. This momentous victory places him alongside an elite group of fighters, including Conor McGregor, Daniel Cormier, Amanda Nunes, and Henry Cejudo, to hold championships in 2 UFC divisions simultaneously. What makes Makhachev's dominance particularly remarkable is the complete deconstruction of Della Maddalena's fighting style, a feat that reveals the intricate biological, tactical, and technical superiority that defines his fighting approach. This video explores 10 critical dimensions of Makhachev's physiology and tactical arsenal that collectively explain why he stands as the preeminent UFC competitor in the contemporary era, elite cardiovascular conditioning, and metabolic superiority. Islam Makhachev's cardiovascular system represents one of his most formidable weapons, operating at a level that separates champions from competitors. Unlike fighters who experience marked performance degradation from round to round, Makhachev maintains consistent pressure, speed, and technical execution across all 5 rounds of championship fights. This exceptional aerobic capacity stems from his foundation in Dagestani wrestling traditions combined with modern high-altitude training methodologies. His training camps incorporate sustained mountain running, intense grappling sessions, and circuit training that develops both aerobic and anaerobic energy systems simultaneously. Against Della Maddalena, this cardiovascular advantage manifested as relentless, unyielding pressure that never diminished, even in the later rounds when most fighters experience significant fatigue-induced performance loss. The physiological mechanism underlying this advantage involves superior mitochondrial density in his muscle fibers, enhanced oxygen utilization efficiency, and optimized lactate buffering capacity. What emerges from this conditioning is a psychological dimension. Opponents literally realize their pressure is insufficient because Makhachev's output remains constant regardless of the round. His transition to welterweight only amplified this advantage as he enters that division with conditioning refined at a lighter weight, providing him with relative strength and durability advantages over welterweights who built their conditioning at 170 pounds. Exceptional sprawl mechanics and defensive wrestling base. Makhachev's defensive wrestling foundation constitutes his defensive fortress, demonstrating a 90.9% takedown defense rate, the second highest in UFC lightweight history. This statistic reflects not merely reaction speed, but rather an advanced understanding of body positioning, weight distribution, and anticipatory mechanics that represents years of sambo and wrestling discipline. His sprawl technique exhibits textbook precision. When opponents attempt takedowns, Makhachev extends his legs backward explosively while maintaining a strong base, using his substantial core stability to prevent underneath positioning. The biomechanical advantage here is crucial. His sprawl prevents opponents from establishing the underhook or leg control necessary for successful takedown completion. Against opponents with championship-caliber wrestling, including Alexander Volkanovski, this defensive layer forced them into compromised entries or wasted energy on fruitless takedown attempts. What distinguishes Makhachev's sprawl defense is the active framework layered atop the passive technical base. Rather than simply resisting downward pressure, he systematically breaks his opponent's grips, creates whizzers to isolate their arms, and transitions immediately into offensive sequences. This transforms defense into offense, a principle that distinguishes elite wrestlers from merely competent ones. Anatomically optimized grappling structure and core architecture. Makhachev possesses an anatomically advantageous grappling structure that combines favorable proportions with exceptional muscular development, concentrated in areas that maximize wrestling control. Standing 5 feet 10 inches with a 70.5-inch reach, Makhachev operates in the moderate range for his division. Yet his physical architecture maximizes grappling efficiency. His core musculature, comprising the abdominal wall, obliques, and spinal erectors, has been developed to support sustained position maintenance, explosive transitions, and resistance to opponent escape attempts. Unlike strikers whose core development emphasizes rotational power and striking mechanics, Makhachev's core architecture reflects wrestling-first development. Dense, immovable mass that resists pressure, rather than explosively generating force. This architectural difference is profound. During top position exchanges, his core rigidity prevents opponents from creating the space necessary for hip escape attempts. His shoulder girdle development, particularly the deltoids and traps, facilitates superior clinch work and control when opponents attempt to create distance or establish grips. The biomechanical positioning of his arms relative to his torso allows him to establish underhooks and arm trap positions that technically superior opponents cannot escape through strength differentials alone. His leg length, while not exceptional in absolute terms, combines with his posterior chain development, glutes, hamstrings, and lower back to create a grappling base that absorbs and distributes pressure efficiently. Southpaw stance advantages and angular fighting geometry. Makhachev's southpaw stance position creates a fundamental geometric advantage that extends across all aspects of fighting engagement, striking, clinch work, and ground positioning. As a naturally left-handed fighter, his lead hand originates from an unconventional angle that most opponents train far less extensively to defend against. This stance asymmetry creates angular distortions in an opponent's threat perception and defensive reflexes. His primary striking weapons, the straight left hand and rear leg left roundhouse kick, emerge from angles where opponent defenses are conventionally positioned for orthodox strikers. The psychological and biomechanical consequences are significant. Opponents must adjust their defensive geometry entirely, moving their head movement patterns and hand placements to defend against southpaw configurations they encounter less frequently in their training. Della Maddalena, despite his world-class boxing pedigree, found himself forced to adapt his entire defensive structure within the first round. Makhachev's left body kick, delivered with an ascending trajectory rather than the conventional roundhouse motion, exploits the spatial gaps created by orthodox stance positioning. His straight left-hand timing originates from different timing windows than orthodox cross-counters, catching opponents who have timed their defensive reactions to conventional boxing patterns. More subtly, his southpaw positioning affects his clinch and grappling geometry. When he establishes collar ties from his southpaw stance, his arm positioning creates different leverage angles for underhook establishment and knee tap execution compared to orthodox clinch work. Sambo and Judo DNA in every exchange. Under the hood, Islam is basically a walking advertisement for Russian combat sports. He's an international master of sport in combat sambo and a gold medalist at the World Combat Sambo Championships. Plus, he holds a black belt in judo. That matters because his physiology, strong legs, flexible hips, powerful grip, has been built since childhood around throws, trips, and clinch fighting. Instead of the blast double wrestling of a typical American wrestler, you see inside trips, outside reaps, body lock dumps, and effortless transitions from one takedown to another. Against Jack Della Maddalena, that sambo-judo blend showed up immediately. He didn't just shoot from far away. He used kicks and feints to enter, tied Jack up on the fence, then turned those clinches into half guard and top control with minimum wasted energy. His balance in the clinch comes straight from years of being thrown and re-throwing others on the mat. That training sculpted his posture, neck strength, and grip endurance, making it easier to maintain positions that would fry most fighters' muscles. Technically and physically, his entire body has been trained to make clinch chaos feel like home. Superior pressure fighting mechanics and relentless forward momentum. Makhachev embodies the Dagestani pressure fighting methodology, maintaining unceasing forward momentum that psychologically and physically breaks down opponents across fight duration. This approach transcends mere aggression. It represents a sophisticated application of positional forcing that limits opponent options while conserving his own energy. His pressure mechanism functions through several integrated components. Spatially, he closes distance in controlled sequences, minimizing the opportunity for opponent counterattacking while positioning himself for clinch establishment or takedown entry. Temporally, his forward pressure never ceases. Even when not actively pursuing takedowns or strikes, his positioning suggests constant threat, keeping opponents on their heels. Psychologically, opponents experience mounting desperation as their retreat options become increasingly limited, forcing them toward the cage where Makhachev consolidates positional advantages. This pressure created devastating impacts against Della Maddalena, neutralizing the Australian champion's preferred fighting range, where his striking precision optimizes. The biomechanical foundation of Makhachev's pressure fighting involves superior footwork patterns that maintain balanced advancement, while preserving explosive capacity for sudden level changes or clinch establishments. Devastating calf kick specialization and lower limb targeting precision. Islam Makhachev's calf kick represents a specialized technical weapon that systematically dismantles opponent mobility while maintaining lower physical cost to himself. Against Della Maddalena, Makhachev systematically targeted the Australian champion's right leg with repeated calf kicks that progressively degraded the structural integrity of his opponent's stance. This wasn't random striking. Rather, it represented a sophisticated tactical gambit aimed at undermining the weight-bearing, mobility, and explosive capacity necessary for effective striking combinations and footwork. The calf kick's mechanics involve striking the lateral gastrocnemius and soleus muscles with the shin bone, densest striking surface available, applied with a rising angular trajectory rather than conventional roundhouse motion. This ascending delivery makes the calf kick remarkably difficult to defend against with conventional leg checking, because the timing and angle diverge from what opponents anticipate. Cumulatively, Della Maddalena absorbed repeated shin strikes directly to the musculature responsible for ankle plantar flexion, dorsiflexion control, and lateral stability. The physiological consequence involves progressive muscle damage, edema formation, and cumulative neural disruption that degrades the neuromuscular feedback necessary for precise footwork execution. As the fight progressed, Della Maddalena's mobility visibly deteriorated. His footwork became constrained, his weight distribution shifted to avoid loading the damaged leg, and his overall fighting geometry was compromised. Lethal submission finishing capability with emphasis on Darce choke mastery. Makhachev's submission specialization represents one of MMA's most refined technical arsenals, executed with a 48% submission finish rate, the highest among contemporary top-tier fighters. His technical execution extends beyond mere knowledge of various submission techniques. Rather, it reflects an intimate understanding of human anatomy, leverage mechanics, and positional control that allows him to finish elite opponents with startling efficiency. The Darce choke exemplifies his submission mastery, particularly his devastating application against Dustin Poirier, UFC 302, and Renato Moicano, UFC 311, two submission victories where opponents submitted almost instantaneously upon choke application. His Darce choke execution demonstrates immaculate form. He positions the blade of his forearm directly against the carotid artery while the opponent's arm crosses their body, then applies relentless pressure that compresses the carotid via arterial occlusion rather than tracheal compression. The anatomical precision here is remarkable. Rather than pursuing the full deep arm rear naked choke variation that requires extensive arm positioning adjustments, Makhachev's short Darce application minimizes the spatial distance between pressure application and the structures he targets. This efficiency means opponents experience sudden unconsciousness rapidly after choke completion, because carotid compression restricts cerebral blood flow with minimal delay. The technical mastery extends to his armbar specialization, demonstrated through multiple submission victories via armbar techniques. His arm positioning during armbar establishment prevents the elbow escape attempts that characterize how most fighters attempt to defend this submission. His submission success rate reflects not luck or opponent mistakes, but rather systematic technical mastery, combined with superior positional control that creates the circumstances where submission opportunities naturally emerge. Advanced game planning and strategic adaptability across combat contexts. Islam Makhachev's fight intelligence, the capacity to adapt strategy based on opponent strengths, environmental factors, and real-time fight dynamics, elevates him beyond technically skilled fighters to strategic martial artists. His welterweight transition camp demonstrates this adaptability. Recognizing that moving up in weight required fundamental strategic adjustments, his team implemented three distinct phases of preparation. The Russian strength and size-building phase focused on developing the explosive power and muscular foundation necessary for welterweight competition. His Dubai conditioning phase incorporated the cardiovascular refinement necessary for maintaining his pressure-fighting style at the heavier weight. His New Jersey team-building phase specifically replicated Della Maddalena's boxing patterns and takedown defense strategies, allowing him to develop specific tactical responses before stepping into the cage. His fight-to-fight strategic adjustments demonstrate advanced planning and adaptability. Against high-level wrestlers like Arman Tsarukyan, he employs submission-threatening groundwork to prevent opponents from utilizing wrestling offense. Against striking-focused opponents like Alexander Volkanovski, he establishes superior clinch position to neutralize their striking range advantages. His coaching relationship with Khabib Nurmagomedov brings technical refinement often invisible to casual observers. Small details that people don't see, the little traps, the setups, the timing. As Makhachev described his mentorship, exceptional takedown accuracy and position-first wrestling philosophy. Makhachev's wrestling presents a 53.7% takedown accuracy rate combined with a 90.9% takedown defense percentage, fundamentally establishing him as perhaps MMA's most complete wrestler. His takedown accuracy exceeds most elite MMA wrestlers despite regularly facing championship-caliber opposition, a statistic that reflects not merely technical skill, but rather intelligent positioning and timing that maximizes his success probability. His wrestling operates on position-first principles derived from Dagestani sambo traditions. Rather than pursuing flashy, low-percentage takedown attempts, he systematically establishes positions from which takedown completion becomes high percentage through proper setup and pressure accumulation. His clinch-to-takedown transitions exemplify this approach. From underhooks and collar ties, he chains multiple takedown techniques, knee taps that create momentum toward trips, inside reaps that exploit opponent weight distribution, and foot sweep variations that capitalize on specific opponent stances. This technical diversity frustrates opponents who defend against one technique only to encounter a different finishing variation. His takedown setup utilizes his striking layer remarkably effectively. His left body kicks and straight left hands aren't merely offensive weapons. They serve as setup mechanisms that create the defensive reactions he exploits for clinch establishment and subsequent takedowns against Della Maddalena. His takedown accuracy neutralized the welterweight champion's wrestling credentials entirely, establishing control that allowed him to systematically impose his will. The biomechanical efficiency of his takedown entries reflects advanced body mechanics, combat longevity markers, and systematic risk management philosophy. Islam Makhachev's fighting approach exhibits sophisticated risk management philosophy that maximizes efficiency while minimizing the cumulative damage that degrades fighter longevity. His 94.4% win percentage, 17 wins against 1 loss, reflects not merely technical superiority, but rather conservative decision-making that avoids unnecessary risks. Against elite opposition, he rarely engages in trading striking exchanges, an approach that many less intelligent fighters pursue, believing that matching opponent intensity demonstrates warrior spirit. Instead, Makhachev slips punches, moves his head off centerline, utilizes footwork to limit offensive opportunities, and maintains a high guard that blocks cleanly while creating opportunities for counters. This defensive discipline is visible across his striking statistics. His 1.53 significant strikes absorbed permanent ranks, 5th lowest in UFC lightweight history, meaning that despite constantly pursuing forward pressure, he absorbs substantially less damage than opponents. This remarkable statistic reflects his defensive sophistication. He advances without recklessness, maintains appropriate distance management, and prioritizes position control over striking exchanges. His ground fighting approach emphasizes position maintenance and control over attempting every available submission or aggressive maneuver. Rather than immediately pursuing arm triangle chokes or other advanced submissions upon achieving top position, he often spends rounds establishing complete positional control, forcing opponents into increasingly desperate positions where submission opportunities emerge naturally. This patient approach minimizes the escape scrambles and escapes that characterize rushed submission attempts, particularly valuable against elite grapplers who exploit submission attempt failures. His striking accuracy of 59.5% represents UFC lightweight history's highest significant strike accuracy, meaning that when he strikes, his techniques accomplish their intended purpose with remarkable frequency. His reign as double belt holder reflects not merely individual accomplishment, but rather the comprehensive integration of every element that produces elite-level MMA performance. We are looking forward to his next big venture, the White House card. That's all for today's video. See you in the next one.